First, a great good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. The objective is to give you a 30-minute view about cybersecurity and blockchain. A great good afternoon. It's a pleasure. I would like to thank the opportunity from the organizing committee, Colonel Bajam Jamel and Belkacem Udladzi, which invited me originally to speak about blockchain and cybersecurity. The following presentation is scheduled to take place in Algeria today from 3 to 3:30, and we are actually broadcasting this live on YouTube. So I will change now to the slides, and as I go through, I'll continue the discussion. As you know, cybersecurity is an extremely important element today as we deploy modern applications. Obviously, as we deploy these modern applications, one of the key ones that has become extremely innovative in the last 5 to 7 years, it has been blockchain. Blockchain, obviously, as a new technology, introduces a lot of new concepts, and as a result has been target of many cyber attacks. Although I work for Huawei, this presentation is primarily an educational one, which is designed to give you tips and techniques on how to properly cyber defense yourself. So I invite you to, following this presentation, to read some more and educate yourself on a lot of the concepts presented during this talk. As we know, cybersecurity is advancing tremendously, and as such, today, whether you happen to be in cryptocurrencies, crypto as we sometimes call it, blockchain, what we have today is a number of new complex cyber attacks. My talk will cover the following elements: the complexity of these attacks, the maturity of the technologies, which introduces a lot of vulnerabilities in many cases, wallets, exchanges, the increasing prevalence of malware, some of the key vulnerabilities, the importance, again, of the end user and what's sometimes called social engineering, and some of the key practices that will assist you as we move forward. One would have to ask yourselves why hackers are focusing on cryptocurrencies and crypto technology as a whole. Why hackers in the past have actually focused on things like banking and financial institutions. The concept is pretty much the same. Hackers focus their attention where the money is. And as such, you need to take the necessary countermeasures to properly basically defend yourselves. Some of the large cyber attacks date back quite a number of years. We're to now in 2018. One of the first largest cyber attacks that actually took place was against one of the cyber currency or Bitcoin exchanges known as Mt. Gox. During this attack in 2011, hackers were able to actually create fake Bitcoins and introduce them into exchange. By having the capability of introducing fake Bitcoins, they were able to change the price online in a short period of time, and that saw the currency drop substantially during that period. These 2 million Bitcoins that got created allowed them to actually manipulate trading during that period. And this obviously created so much trouble that eventually Mt. Gox went actually out of business. And in this context, the thieves got away with 2,000 authentic Bitcoins. Bitcoins today trade in the neighborhood of about $7,000 to $8,000, sometimes up to $10,000. So that gives you the idea of the amounts that were implicated in this specific attack. Mt. Gox is still under receivership and quite regularly releases large amounts of Bitcoin into the exchanges today. One of the important aspects that blockchain introduces is the fact that it's a public ledger. It's an immutable ledger. However, the identities of the traders are actually supposed to remain anonymous. The only thing you have is the identity of, or a number that identifies the wallet. A specific organization or individual can create as many wallets as they require to actually receive those Bitcoins. Important enough is that although Bitcoin is supposed to be anonymous, it's not fully anonymous. It's actually pseudo-anonymous. So if you have enough big data about all the transactions that have been performed, eventually you will actually be able to trace back the original persons that actually performed these transactions. So though the degree of anonymity that was expected to be there has obviously disappeared over the years. The same way we talk about security today in the context of blockchain, everything is actually connected to the internet. When we have everything actually connected to the internet, then the vulnerabilities or the attacks that are coming against those platforms can actually come from everywhere. Everything being connected, any elements can actually be a potential entry point. What happens to be the exchanges, the wallets, the miners, or any of the components of the architecture that are actually in existence today. Over the year, many of these types of attacks have become more and more sophisticated. Obviously, one of the key elements of the Bitcoin and blockchain network is miners. It's miners that actually store a copy of the blockchain. It's miners that mine for new Bitcoins and miners that actually perform the transactions. However, many of these miners have been installed on the internet using default user IDs and passwords. So with a simple command like SSH, we can easily telnet into these and obviously attack them and actually steal any kind of currency that would have been mined or populated by them. The attacks over the years have become more and more sophisticated. So some of them have actually focused a lot on creating miners themselves. So what happens when we look about currencies like Monero, they require much less resources to actually mine. So that means we can easily install a process on the machine that will actually be used to mine by using the excess CPU that would be available inside that machine. So hackers have created fileless malware that installs this Monero miners on the machines and basically looks for new machines to infect. That you infect the miners you have working for you using any kind of CPU resources as these machines are actually attached to the internet. Substantial sums of money have been collected use this kind of attacks. Now, one of these attacks is obviously using malware, but the attackers have become more and more sophisticated. So what they've started doing is actually embedding a lot of these miners into some of the most popular websites. One example of these websites is Pirate Bay. So that means if you're looking for downloads under Pirate Bay, chances are that your machine or your browser is actually mining Monero for somebody else. The same thing has happened, for example, if you happen to watch CBS Showtime movies or series, the same thing is also happening. So what we have is a whole new series of attacks known under our technology or cybersecurity as cryptojacking that hides the miners under the existing technologies. Cryptojacking is becoming indeed a very serious problem. It is affecting not just browsers, but it's actually affecting SCADA systems. In some cases, cryptojacking has been installed in things like power plants, or in this case, a water processing plant. Some people have tried to cryptojack using supercomputers. Some people have cryptojacked using electrical cars. Some people have cryptojacked using mobiles, meaning that one would be able to infect your mobile with malware and use the spare CPU part or unused CPU on your mobile to actually mine a cryptocurrency for the cyber attackers. One of the key elements of the cryptocurrency network is miners. Many of these miners obviously are using not always traditional technology. In this context, model of the miner, Antminer, which is a very popular Bitcoin miner known as S4, is actually being banned by a company called T-Mobile. The emanations created by this miner are actually creating substantial interferences that are actually resulting in blocking the LTE from the network. So that means people which are in the neighborhood of these miners are having intermittent problems in the usage of their LTE network on their mobiles. Other people that have been interested in mining cryptocurrencies are organizations like, for example, North Korea. By stealing Bitcoins, they're able to fund some of their research in war machine. So they have done a lot of quite sophisticated attacks against South Korea crypto exchanges. One of the attacks that actually took place is against something called DAO. This specifically attack resulted in DAO, which is actually collecting money to raise functionality in the blockchain, in this case Ethereum blockchain. So a good portion of the money they raise actually being stolen by hackers. So as you can see, the kinds of attacks that we see today are obviously getting more and more sophisticated. Hackers are also launching sophisticated scannings against the internet, looking for anything that is part of cryptocurrencies, blockchain networks. So they're looking for coins, looking for wallets, looking for miners. These are slow but surely scans that are looking for pieces of the blockchain network which are attached to the internet but are actually happen to be vulnerable. One of the components that exists in crypto wallets is known as multi-signature wallets. That means more than one individual is required to signature for the transaction to actually take place. Somebody attacked one of these Ethereum wallets and used a bug that resulted in $400 million of Ethereum actually being frozen or unusable because it sits in a where that is not actually being attached to a single wallet in which it can be further transferred. This is not the only case in which Bitcoins, Ethereum, or other coins have been lost. Actually, quite a substantial amount of coins, up to several percentage of these coins have been lost forever, simply because of misprogramming or mistransfer of these funds between the specific wallets as a result, or simply because people forgot the keys, allowing them to actually access these wallets. Crypto exchanges are one of the weakest points today in the blockchain network. Over the last 10 years, 2016, 2018, so last 3 to 4 years, we have seen an increasing number of attacks that has resulted in substantial, ever-increasing amounts of money being lost, from as little as a few $1,000s to actually several $1 million. This is not a complete list, but simply one that highlights the point. One of the specific exchanges in Japan, Zaif, actually had a vulnerability in their website. This resulted in them selling Bitcoins at $0. This could have been a major hack, but they were able to actually stop it in time. You can imagine what is the cost of selling thousands or thousands of Bitcoins for $0 for having the buyers then sell them at the real market price. One of the key components of accessing wallets that give you access to exchanges and other elements of the blockchain technology is done through mobiles. However, mobiles themselves have got some key vulnerabilities that could either immediately render their access to those currencies or blockchain technology extremely vulnerable. That means today SS7, which is the technology that is used in mobiles and telephony networks, has some vulnerabilities in them. When these vulnerabilities get exploited, one is able to intercept or impersonate calls, intercept or impersonate SMSs. As you know today, calls or SMSs are a key element about accessing your identity online. That means your email accounts, your online storage, as well as your devices. So somebody can attack your wallets by resetting your Gmail password or your email that is attached to your crypto wallet. Or even further than that, after stealing that information, they can actually erase your device as well. I have a video of this hacking actually taking place. And what I will do is I'll send you a link later on of this video so you can actually play it and watch it as well. This video details on by using SS7 attack, one can change the user ID password of your account in a Bitcoin exchange like Coinbase, and as a result, being able to steal all the cryptocurrency, regardless of the cryptocurrency being stored in the exchange wallet. That really brings us to the important aspect that today you should not necessarily keep your currencies in the wallets as they store in exchanges. One of the key elements as well in blockchain that got introduced with Ethereum was called smart contracts. Smart contracts are pieces of code that get executed every time a transaction gets performed in the blockchain. Today, we have many thousands of these smart contracts being extremely vulnerable. A quick audit identified that over 34,000 of these smart contracts were actually vulnerable because the code contained within them did not have the proper validation of parameters, so this could easily be used to launch a cyber attack. So today, people are using what is called cold storage wallets. However, themselves, these cold storage wallets, there are wallets that actually store your private keys that have access to your cryptocurrency chains. So they can easily be protected by a password, a fingerprint, or others. However, these also contain vulnerabilities and their firmware. Sometimes it's not just vulnerabilities in this firmware, it's where you actually purchase these cold storage wallets. One of the best known attacks where somebody by a mistake purchase a not new nano ledger in the market, and as a result the attacker had changed the recovery keys, so whoever was using that wallet was able to have access to the contents of that wallet without having access to the original nano ledger. Since then, Nano has actually fixed, or Ledger fixed this problem. Since then, other attacks have resulted actually in physical attacks sometimes. This case happens to be from a blogger in St. Petersburg, which was publicizing online the fact that he made substantial amounts of money using Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other coins. Robbers came to his house, beat him up, and actually stole all his coins, which amounted for about $500,000. Today, with the exploits that we have online, we can buy new, more sophisticated exploits that will access blockchain technology, exchange wallets, or any of the other elements that are part of the blockchain. That really means that today, you need to be more vigilant and examine these new vulnerabilities to help reduce the exposure of these networks as they get deployed. As I mentioned before, Bitcoin is actually pseudo-anonymous. Since these transactions transfer by using simple digits, they can easily be hidden in things like, for example, an image. So this particular image actually contains $12 million in USD in transfers. So it becomes obviously more difficult for organizations like police or others to actually identify. However, because the transactions are pseudo-anonymous and the advantage of things like big data technology, NSA has several programs in place that actually focus on tracking Bitcoin. This tracking of Bitcoin has actually resulted in the shutdown of several marketplaces that were available on the internet and that were primarily focused on the usage of Bitcoin. That means enough information was extracted from the transactions to actually convict the individuals responsible for running those marketplaces. New generation and types of attacks focus on the most simple technology, social engineering, and this is the attack of people. So people go online, impersonate somebody else, and actually fool people into revealing enough information to actually steal their hard-earned money. We have had many cases as well where we have had exchanges being phished. Phish is traditional attacks in which somebody sends you an URL or a website address that looks like the original address but has some small changes in it that redirects them to an address that is actually a copy of the original website but sends the information directly to the cyber attackers. Obviously, these social engineering extends to almost anything. In many cases, fake Bitcoins have been used in scams, and in some cases, netted as much as $5 million would found themselves into Mauritius and Morocco. People that have a high profile are actually also a target of scammers. So online, many people are actually impersonating some of these personalities, which results in things like pump and dump schemes and many others, allowing them to actually steal hard-earned money from the cyber traders as well. As I mentioned before, blockchain smart contracts have substantial amount of vulnerabilities. So today we're looking at establishing a new set of best practices, auditing, governance, and even legislation. Countries like, for example, Switzerland, Malta, and others are on the leading edge of introducing technology and legislation to actually enable cryptocurrency as well as blockchain technology to flourish, but while at the same time being controlled properly. So what are some of the recommended crypto measures or countermeasures to reduce the operational risks that you may have today online, whether you happen to do exchanges, wallets, cold or warm on exchanges? So some of the key countermeasures include protecting your email account, protecting your social media account, not posting things online that make you visible or highly a target of cyber attackers. Use multi-factor authentication of these devices or biometric technology. Regularly do vulnerability management on the applications that are being used, and this includes things like anti-malware or virus detection on the various devices, whether it happens to be browsers, desktops, or mobile devices. You need to have a more sophisticated way towards threat management and conduct regular security awareness trainings, since most of the users of these technologies are actually not cybersecurity experts, and as a result, need constant reminder of things to do and not to do. And finally, you must also conduct regular response drills or incident response drills that identify what to do in the case of one incident actually takes place. I've created over the years a process called ASICs that introduces a structured way of dealing with any kind of security or cybersecurity for any implementation against IT systems. It has 6 primarily steps, which I call the A6 or A to the power 6 of security. It includes like assessments, architecture to design the proper protection mechanism, apply, which is the implementation of those security measures, administration, which is the daily tasks that you conduct to actually make sure that the security is being done effectively. But even this is not important. You need to do awareness training, as I mentioned, and you need to introduce agility, which includes elements like incidents response that I mentioned earlier. Today, for you to be serious about cybersecurity in the context of blockchain, you need to have the proper cybersecurity metrics as well as countermeasures. What do I mean here by cybersecurity metrics? Is identify the KPIs that you need to measure and quantify and track over time to identify if your risk exposures are being properly controlled or if your risks are increasing over time. I again thank the organizing committee from Algeria for the opportunity to present in this forum. I invite you to contact me in case you have any specific questions. You can follow my regular posts on Twitter about cybersecurity. And you have both my email accounts. The first one is my business account, and the second one allows you to connect to me on social media, LinkedIn, and other platforms as well. Thank you. I thank, obviously, for the opportunity to be part of this forum. Looking forward to you for the next event, and stay safe online. Do not forget that security is a continuous and skilled process that must be done around the clock in order to stay safe. Thank you.